Alright, so it is officially Halloween o'clock, and it's time to bust out the annual specials. Luckily, cartoons don't seem to be lacking in any sort of that spooky zeal, but you might be looking for something different from the typical Nightmare Before Coraline in the Frank and Norman Monster House with the Addams Family. Or maybe the typical Danny Phantom Marathon just ain't cutting it this year. So allow me to plug a Spooky Time series that, while not exactly 6 feet under, has been in a kind of undead status until recently. Monster Allergy, while on surface level being fairly self-explanatory, is a menagerie of hidden layers like your seasonal rotten onion. It focuses on one Ezekiel Zeke, the unofficial frontman for Gorillaz, Mach 5, and his journey and subsequent immersion into the hidden world of monsters. His wickedly long list of ailments and allergies happens to include a sensitivity to monsters, which serves as his official bridge into the cracked-out world of spirits, bogies, phantoms, and other grades of mind-bending chaos. His closest confidant and new girl on the block, Elena Potato, while in eternal pain, proves to be just as knowledgeable of the world of monsters and thus becomes one of his most powerful allies. Together, they gradually get sucked into more dangerous missions and deeper messes as they fight to learn more secrets of the monster world. And also kind of be Pokemon masters because potatoes. You know what? I don't think I can really sum this up well. You know, I think this trailer is just gonna have to do the job for me.
A kid who's allergic to pollen that can see the lunch you're digesting, the holes in your socks, even monsters that you can't see, all kinds of crazy stuff.
I believe you, Zeke.
Really? Then run away!
When I first heard of Monster Allergy, I can't say I was instantly hooked, but that trailer sure helped to win me over, you know. This series alone took me years to start understanding the lore and the plot developments introduced in Season 1, and it didn't even get halfway through back then. Part of what prompted me to talk about it today is because of the long-awaited English adapted version of the comics finally hitting the American market. As of now, there's only 2 volumes out, with a 3rd pinned for a February release, but it seems like there's solid dedication towards finishing this series, which is a first. The history of Monster Allergy as a franchise is definitely as expansive as the cartoon itself, which serves as the bridge, if not the core, of the franchise's development. Looking at the full timeline of development is just fascinating, but coverage of it has been wickedly scarce. For a while, this video, which serves as a chronological look back on the franchise as a whole, was the only video here discussing it. No, wait, there was one more. It's by the same person, though. There seems to be no shortage of AMVs, though, which is great for the franchise's one and true only functional ship. Luckily, we can look back at the franchise's history a bit closer today and shed some light on all it's been through. Monster Allergy got started in late 2003 as an Italian comic book series published by Disney's local publishing division, the same one responsible for publishing such classics as Papernick, Topolino, and Witch, among other titles. The 4 creators of the series came off producing the latter entity, which they kept in creating a similarly fantastical yet complex atmosphere for. Quickly becoming a smash hit, the acclaimed animation studio Rainbow SPA stepped in to produce an animated adaptation of the supernaturally gripping comic. And within no time at all, the cartoon hit Europe and was met with moderate success. Despite the franchise's earlier success, perhaps its biggest downfall was the lack of organization in international distribution. While not exactly a homegrown corporate entity, its popularity came up very, very fast. As understandable as it is for logistics to get lost in the shuffle, the resulting inconsistency left many fans in the dark. The comics were distributed well enough around Western Europe, though some countries like Spain had publishers that apparently didn't finish the comic's full run. The cartoon, being a German, French, and Italian co-production, generally got good air coverage in those countries. Other Western European countries got the show either on free-to-air TV or on basic cable channels like Nick. Disney had a special relationship with distribution as the de facto publishers and thus got to air this series in several regions on their own channels. Despite getting a decent English dub completed by storied Quebecois studio Cinelume, the series has gotten inconsistent airtime on YTV in Canada and Kids WB in the States. There was an alleged American dub commissioned especially by the latter network featuring Danny Phantom as our lead, but save for some minor dialogue changes to the Canadian one, there have been no alternate English dubs created thus far. There's some evidence that Monster Allergy got airtime on the latter, but clips are only found to include the Quebecois cast. Up until this year, there has never been an official North American release for the comics. Fansubs got us by while fans scrambled to assemble all the Kids WB airings in one place. Things started to ease up once the full series got put on Netflix and later on YouTube, with 5 excellent dubs to choose from, but the Americas have been sorely neglected by the franchise. Granted, the comics did receive English translations thanks to Singaporean and Filipino publishers, as well as airtime in the Southeast Asian region, but of course both versions are relatively obscure. Not to come off as entitled, of course, it is an inherently European series after all. Technically speaking, I could probably trudge my way through the comics in one of the European publications. Of course, when trying to understand the complexities of evolving character dynamics and expanding world building, I don't want to exactly spend half my time trying to translate all the dialogue. I'm more relieved we're starting to get more equal distribution now. This great shuffling of properties partially led to Monster Allergy falling off the map and not being the international favorite it was destined to be like its predecessors. Now that I think about it, it definitely wouldn't have profited off the same market as the other two, but it got a strong start in merchandising, perhaps in contrast to the series proper. I mean, Rainbow went all out to try to sell this show to people who already bought into it. DVDs, figures, extra books, a trading card game, foodstuff tie-ins paired with a functional PC game, even a select portion of a theme park was dedicated to Monster Allergy. A few years ago, a regional stage adaptation was even developed by a kids' trope and was also given the red carpet treatment despite not being an official Rainbow production. Now, to be frank, I don't think all this was artificial. I believe there was general success acquired by this franchise in its country of origin, and it enabled the creation of all these cool projects. I wish I could say the same for adjacent areas, though. The Monster Allergy cartoon itself is an enigma. I had a lot of fun sitting through it, mainly due to its mimetic nature. It really gives the phrase, every frame a painting, a whole new perspective. It really does. Now, given the limited resources at our disposal, I'd highly recommend starting off with the comics before plunging into the animated series. Not only would it probably help you decide whether or not you want to invest more time into it, but it would help you understand what's going on substantially. Even just skimming through the first American issue will be an adequate primer to navigate this wibbly-wobbly series, compared to just going in dry. You know how both Full Metal Alchemist anime had separate continuities and endings that subsequently change your perception on the story depending on which you start off with? Yeah, it's the same diff here. The series, in contrast to the comics, is very open-ended. This applies to how the stories are executed, plot development, progression of power distribution. It doesn't meander, but there's quite a bit of extra padding to it in contrast to the comics. The second season is where the comic story largely gets derailed, but up until that point, both match exceptionally well. The second seems to fall more in line with conventional premises regarding young animated prodigies, while also trying to advance the regular Monster Allergy story. It doesn't pan out as satisfyingly as possible, but given what we got before, Season 2 wasn't a terrible spot to be in. Apparently the series has had a story editor assigned from each network the show is co-produced with, in addition to the regular Italian staff, so it might explain the dub's lack of focus. But it also might not, and it could just be a scribbler for suggesting that. The dub itself is just aight. It seems like there may have been a fair amount of cohesion in the translation department, because for every dub I've cross-referenced it with, it seems like the various dubs were really faithful to the original dialogue. I could be totally wrong, but just based off listening to it, it seems like a fair amount of dialogue was given verbatim from the script, so kudos for that. A major caveat to that is that the scripts are naturally a bit awkward. The pacing in the original Italian is also a bit unnatural, so some of this is exasperated in the English dub. Interestingly enough, Zeke and Elena are perhaps stuck with the most clunky verbiage out of all of the cast. The vocal qualities chosen for the main crew are also pretty accurate to the character, even though the main duo occasionally slips out of character voice.
Good. That'll make it so much easier for us to work together. Now we know where we stand, let's start the search.
You got something on your nose. You need a bit of Kleenex.
These attributes contribute to the English dub of Monster Allergy becoming some of the most entertaining content I've ever set eyes on. I imagine as far as dubbing jobs go, this was probably on the lower scale of quality, but given what we got out of it anyway, it ended up being a pretty high concept dub. Didn't stop it from being any less enjoyable though. In any language you watch it in, it's just great. So in general, it's far from perfect, but the franchise can adequately scratch that itch for more darker toned, thick outlined supernatural mystery cartoons of the 2000s. I really hope we can see the American release to completion of its run, because it could very well lead to a rebound of Monster Allergy's popularity abroad. It's a long shot, but it wouldn't be the first time a well-liked adventure serial was significantly hindered by an incompetent US release. It doesn't always work out, but sometimes it takes the right amount of prodding to push that kind of change. Try to have fun with it. Highly recommend it. Go watch it along with the rest of your Halloween traditions. Just be forewarned.
You will be sneezing with fear.
One like, and I will send this boy a box of tissues. A box of tissues so he can actually, finally, blow his nose and move on with his life, mate.